Welcome to this WatchmanOne tutorial video. Today we'll be talking about how to set up users on the system, how to set up alarm notifications and alarm thresholds. So first of all, you need to set up your users. Once you've set up the users in the system, each user will have its own unique email address, which is the email address that will receive the email notifications of the alarms. So to do this, head to the Settings tab, and under Settings, under User Management on the left-hand menu, you will see User Management. Click on Add User at the top right. You will then just need to enter your details: first name, second name, initials, and email address. Under the User Privileges, this is where you can configure each user to be able to do certain things on the system, such as acknowledge the alarms, inhibit the alarms, adjust the scheduler, or adjust set points, and then alter system configuration to manage other users, and then most importantly, receive email alarms. This is where you need to select yes if you want that email address and that user to receive the email notifications of the alarms. Once you've configured your user, you then have to authorize that change, and to do this you would have to authorize it either with an existing admin login or password, which is default is admin1234 lowercase a, and then click add. You'll see here the user is now on your list, and then you can add multiple users at this point. We would recommend trying to keep the system to under 25 users. However, you can do more if you choose to. We would also recommend, from a user management point of view, that where possible, anyone that's using the system regularly does have their own individual user rather than a shared user such as generic QA, a group account for example. This way there's better traceability, and you can see from the system on the audit logs, you can see who's made changes, who's acknowledged alarms, rather than being a generic user. So now, you just need to head to the Site tab to configure the individual sensor alarm set points. So to do this, click on the description column of your sensor that you want to configure. So in this case, we'll click on Cold Store 1, and you'll see at the top right of this sensor configuration page, you have an edit button. This now enables you to change the alarm set point for this individual sensor. So in this case, it's reading 21.3 degrees. And for demonstration purposes, if we put this to 20 degrees, and 5 degrees is the low point, and here we have the delay function. So the delay function is to allow a sensor to go over the set point for that delay period without triggering an alarm. So where this is useful is particularly in freezers where they have defrost cycles, where the freezer is designed to go above, say -18 is the typical temperature point for a freezer. It's designed to go above that to stop frost build-up. And in this case, you don't want a notification, an email notification every time it does that defrost cycle. Typically, defrost cycles last from 45 minutes to an hour. So this is where you would set a delay of 45 minutes or up to an hour for a freezer, I would normally recommend. And that way, it's only at the point if that stays above, say it got to -10, if it's still at -10 after an hour, that's the point that you'll receive the email notification and the alarm trigger. On set points, typically freezers, we would normally see -18 as the high point and -25 as the low point, with a 1 hour delay, or 60 minutes in this case on the system. You would then often see, for a fridge environment, you would often see 5 degrees as the high trigger point and 0 degrees as the low trigger point. With fridges, I would normally recommend a slightly shorter delay because the product is typically a lot more sensitive. So we'd normally see about 45 minutes delay on a fridge. You will also notice at this point there is this alarm 2. This is a second level trigger to allow for instant notifications when your freezer or fridge hits a critical level of temperature. So for example, in a freezer, you may want to set this to, say, -5 as your high trigger point, or if it's a fridge, you may want to set this to more like 15 or 10 degrees, and then that way you then configure this to have just a 1 minute delay, which is the shortest delay on the system. And then once that hits that critical level temperature, you will get an instant notification rather than having to wait for a delay period. You will also see on the bottom right, there's the alarm profile and an auto inhibit. We'll talk about these later on in the video. However, the alarm profile, once you've configured alarm profiles in the settings page, this will enable you to be specific about certain sensors that you may want to be able to send to a different alarm function, or maybe not even to receive an alarm notification from those sensors. You just want them to be able to record. Same with the auto inhibit. Once you set up this schedule in the background in the settings menu, which we'll talk about later, you can then have certain sensors that only alarm for a certain period of a certain time frame in a period of a day. Some examples of this may be a whip chiller or a display counter fridge, where the product's only in there for a certain period of time and you only want to receive notifications or alarm notifications when it's operational. The other function on the alarm configuration for the sensor is this inhibit button. The inhibit button is where, for example, a fridge may have failed, you've already moved the stock out, you've managed the process, and you want to stop alarms coming from that freezer or the fridge because you know there's a fault and it's being dealt with. In this case, you can click the inhibit button, and what that will do is that will stop any alarms coming from that sensor. So the sensor will still record the data because the sensor may already be in that location in that fridge or freezer, and so it'll still be recording but just won't be alarming. And obviously it's critical to make sure that if the fridge has been repaired or the freezer's been repaired and you want that sensor to start alarming again, you should clear that inhibit. So in this case, we've actually set this sensor to alarm because it's reading 21, and you can see here, this has now gone into alarm status. This is now highlighted in red, and we should have received an email notification to say that this cold store has gone above temperature. So now we'll talk about alarm management and what to do when you receive an alarm. So you've just received the alarm. Obviously there's the food safety first. What are you going to do about that product or the stock in the fridge or the freezer? Once that's been dealt with, you then have the alarms tab on the WatchmanOne system. So if you click on alarms, you will now have 4 sub tabs: current, unacknowledged, historical, and audit. So current alarms are sensors that have gone into alarm that are currently still in alarm, or they haven't been acknowledged. So the next tab is unacknowledged, and this is essentially your inbox of alarms. So in here, we'll see here at 13:18, there was an exertion alarm, and it's now cleared. So what you could do, you can click on the link column, and you can even add a comment. See, for example, door left open, checked stock, passed QA tests. You click submit. This will then stamp that comment into the system. You can then close out of here. And you can then acknowledge that alarm by selecting it. You can multi-select at this point. Click acknowledge selected. It will then prompt for the username or the password. Click submit. It then acknowledges that alarm, And that is how you would acknowledge or manage alarms in the system, and you've had the full traceability for any audit purposes. If, for example, in this case, the sensor is still an alarm, i.e. it's still above temperature, so this is still reading 21.4 and the alarm point is 20.0, it will still show in the current tab, and the red alarm circle there will still be notified. Under historical, you can then see in here you have the ones we had acknowledged that had previously cleared. So you can see, again, you can click into the detail, and this one here you can see where I left that comment, so that's all traceable in the system. The audit tab is essentially a log of every event in the system, including alarms. So this might be where a device configuration has been updated. So we can click into there and we can see this is where we changed it from 25 back to 20 degrees. And we changed the alarm delay from 15 to 1, etc. Hopefully this gives a good overview of how to set up your alarms and how to configure the system for the alarms to generate. Again, if you have any questions or need any further support, please don't hesitate to contact our support team. We'll be there to help. Thank you. For further support, please visit our website www.klipspringer.com.